What do you think is the creepiest thing that could happen during the Christmas season? How about your home being haunted by a ghost who just wants to spend time with his family? Well, that's what happened to one family in the 1970s, and they named him the Poltergeist of Thornton, Heath. Hi, I'm your host, and today we're going to look at a haunting from Christmas time. So let's get into it. It all started back in November of 1977 when Helen Acton and her family moved into their new home. The house was located in Thornton Heath, a suburb of London, and the house was old and had many additions built onto it over the years, creating a large labyrinth of corridors and rooms. The place was a mess, though. It had been the home of an elderly woman who had died inside, and she apparently did not want to leave. Almost immediately after moving in, strange things started happening. The family had 2 children, Martin and Leslie. One evening, while they were watching television, the lights suddenly flickered and went out. Then, the sound of footsteps came from above them. Helen and her husband, Eric, went to investigate, but found nothing. They checked the fuse box and everything appeared to be fine. As they went back downstairs, the lights turned back on by themselves. As the days passed, more things happened. Books fell off shelves, doors opened and closed by themselves. Sometimes they would hear whispering voices and even shaking. At night, objects seemed to move by themselves. On one occasion, Mrs. Acton was reading in bed when a book flew across the room and landed on her pillow. Once, Mr. Acton woke up in the middle of the night to see a rocking horse moving at the foot of his bed. He reached out to try to stop it, but he couldn't touch it. Then it vanished. Christmas was approaching and the family was busy decorating the house. Mrs. Acton put up the Christmas tree and hung up some decorations. But every time she would leave the room, something would be knocked over or broken. She could feel a cold spot in the hallway and sometimes would see the shadow of a man walking past her. Then, strange things started happening around Christmas time. One day, Mrs. Acton was making Christmas pudding, and she heard the sound of footsteps coming down the stairs. She turned around and saw the shadow of a man walking away. Another time, she was hanging up some Christmas stockings when she heard chains dragging metal moans. Then, out of the corner of her eye, she saw the shadow of an old man dragging himself closer to her. She screamed and ran away. Then, on Christmas Day, things took a turn for the worse. Helen and her friend Margaret were getting ready to go out when the lights flickered once again and went out. Then they heard the sound of footsteps coming closer. As they searched for the source of the noise, they smelled a strong odor of stale urine and decay. Suddenly, the lights came back on, and standing in front of them was the ghost of an old man. He looked very sad and tried to communicate with them, but he only made a gurgling sound. When Mrs. Acton came downstairs, she saw the ghost standing near the fireplace. He gestured for her to follow him and then walked upstairs. When she called out to him, he disappeared. Helen went to the room that the ghost had come from and saw that her son's toy robot was missing. Earlier, her son had left the robot by the fireplace, but now it was gone. As she continued to search the house, she discovered that other items were also missing. These included her daughter's doll and a cardigan that she had left on a chair. They were all toys and items belonging to the children. Mrs. Acton thought that the ghost might have taken them because he wanted to play with them. She knew that whatever he was, he meant them no harm. That Christmas, the ghost seemed very active. One evening, Helen and her friends were playing charades. The ghost was making regular appearances, but he never stayed long. He would walk through walls, shake people's hands, and then disappear. At one point, he even put his arm around Helen and tried to speak to her. Then he vanished. Another time, Mrs. Acton was sitting by the fire when she heard a noise like someone rolling up a rug. Then she saw the ghost dragging himself closer to her. She wasn't scared at this point, and she wasn't even surprised. She just sat there and watched him. He came closer, looked at her for a moment, and then went back to whatever he was doing. In the following weeks, the ghost became a part of their lives. He continued to make regular appearances, interact with the family, and then vanish. One evening, Mrs. Acton was putting some logs on the fire when the ghost appeared next to her. This time he stayed longer than usual and walked into the kitchen. She followed him and noticed that he was wearing clothes from the 1920s. His shoes were polished and his clothes were neatly pressed. He seemed very well dressed for a ghost. She asked if he was cold, and he nodded his head. She wrapped him in a blanket and told him to stay by the fire until he warmed up. The ghost seemed to appreciate the gesture and spent the entire evening by the fire. He never spoke, but Helen felt as though they had a connection. A few weeks later, the ghost stopped appearing. Helen missed him and wondered where he had gone. Then, one evening in February, he returned. He was thinner and weaker than before, and he was dragging himself closer to the fireplace. Helen helped him over to a chair, and he sat down. He looked at her and nodded his head. Helen thought he was trying to tell her something, so she asked him if he needed anything. To her surprise, he pulled out a handkerchief and wiped his eyes. He then pulled out another handkerchief from his pocket and handed it to Helen. She took it, and he nodded his head again. Then he disappeared. Helen put the handkerchief in an envelope and took it to a local psychic. The psychic told her that the ghost wanted her to keep the handkerchief because it held his essence. She told her that the ghost was the spirit of an old man who had lived in the house a long time ago. He was very lonely, and he wanted someone to talk to. Mrs. Acton kept the handkerchief for a while, but eventually she started to feel sad and lonely herself. She felt as though the ghost was reaching out to her, trying to connect with her. She didn't know what to do, so she went back to the psychic for help. This time, the psychic told her that the ghost was trying to tell her something important. He wanted her to know that he was not a bad spirit, but a good one. He had lived a good life and was now waiting to move on to the afterlife. He was lonely and needed someone to talk to. Helen realized that the ghost was trying to connect with her because he wanted to talk to someone. So she started talking to him. Every night before she went to bed, she would sit by the fireplace and talk to the ghost. She told him about her life, her family, and how she was feeling. She listened to his stories and learned about his life. Over the next few weeks, Helen and the ghost became close friends. He confided in her and told her that he had been waiting for someone to talk to for a long time. He was grateful that she had come along and was willing to listen to him. And then one night, the ghost did not appear. Helen was worried, but she did not know what to do. The next night, he still did not appear. Helen was getting worried, but still no ghost. Finally, on the third night, the ghost reappeared. He was much stronger now, and his form was more solid. He looked at Helen and smiled. She knew in her heart that he was thanking her for listening to him and being his friend. She had helped him find peace, and he was now ready to move on. That night, the ghost did not vanish. Instead, he walked through the wall and disappeared. In the morning, Helen went to the wall and placed her hand on it. She could still feel the ghost's presence there, and she knew that he was watching over her. From time to time, she would hear chains dragging or footsteps, but she no longer felt afraid. She knew that these were just the sounds of the ghost moving around, letting her know that he was still there. Though she never saw the ghost again, she knew that he was still in the house with her. What do you think? Was this really a ghost, or just a figment of the mother's imagination? Let me know in the comments below, and while you're there, hit that subscribe button. I've been your host. Join us next time for more paranormal happenings.